What is going on, Washington fans? Welcome to Taking Command with Josh Taylor here on the JTFB channel. And I am on YouTube, of course, as you know, but I'm also now available on Apple Podcast and Spotify as well. So if you can't watch the videos, no problem. You can still get the audio while you're driving around, long trips, quick trips, whatever, at the house doing stuff. You can plug it in, listen on your favorite podcast platforms. If you need another platform, just hit me up on Twitter at Josh Taylor FB. But figured a lot of people said they wanted the audio stuff as well, so I decided to add that in there. Appreciate all the support. Just got back from the Senior Bowl, currently getting over some kind of sinus infection or something. So if I sound awful, I apologize. Bear with me. But just a lot of great content from the Senior Bowl. So check it out. I've got it here on the channel. Uploading a few things to the podcast now. Of course, this one will be on the platforms right away as well. But once again, just want to say appreciate all the support, and I am full-blown off-season mode right now with the draft, free agency. And of course, I got a lot of player breakdowns that I'll be doing on the draft board on the same channel here, both on podcast and also video form on YouTube as well. So subscribe on both YouTube and your go-to podcast platforms. But on this episode, I'm talking about the 16th pick in the NFL draft that the Washington Commanders currently have. No kind of moves or anything have been made yet. Still kind of early on that. And people are going to say, Josh, it might be a little too early to decide what that 16 pick looks like. You have the combine, of course. You have a lot of things that could happen, trades and so on. And free agency, that's another good point. And I agree with you. But at the same time, I really don't see anything happening with this pick or anything too drastic until, from now to April when the draft happens, to where it would really, dramatically change this. I don't think Washington's going to be big spenders in free agency. I don't think they really lose anybody big. They'll have some depth linebackers, maybe like Cam Sims is gone. I think they're going to just really worry about paying the guys they have on the team, keep everybody in-house, and just build around this team that is actually good. It's just we can't have a quarterback for whatever reason, and that's just been the struggles. We have a good team. We've got a lot of great skill position guys, great defense, but for whatever reason, we can just never have a quarterback good enough to win games and make a deep run in the playoffs. So that's what we're focused on. I'm going to talk about that too. I'm going to talk about the quarterback situation. That's one of the options at pick 16. Like I said, I'm going to go through every option on pick 16. So buckle up. Let's get right to it. Obviously, one of the most important ones I'll start with, probably top priority to a lot of people, and that's including myself, and that is the offensive line. And I got a good look at a lot of guys at the Senior Bowl, and I've done a lot of all 22 film watching and some scouting reports on some big-time draft prospects in that first round for the offensive line. And first one that jumps off the board, of course, is Paris Johnson Jr. out of Ohio State. Can he actually fall to pick 16? I don't see it. I think he is the number one tackle in the draft. I have him over Peter Skronsky. I think he is a top 10 pick. This isn't like the Slaters and the Tristan Wirfs kind of draft that we've had in the past, but this is still a really good offensive line draft. I like it a lot. At first, I really didn't, but the more I really dove into the tape and got to really break down a lot of these guys, I actually really like this class. Not just the tackles, left and right, but also the interior lineman is a lot deeper than I thought. There is a big drop off, especially that tackle spot after like the second round. There's not really much after, going to the third, fourth rounds. I'm really too high on as a starter foundational piece. But for Paris Johnson, I don't think he is going to be there at pick 16. Unfortunately, could Washington trade up and get him? Possibly, but I don't think that's in the cards at all for Washington. Now, Peter Skronsky, this is the interesting one. I've talked about him a couple times. I've seen him play live. As you know, I covered Penn State. I was at the Penn State Northwestern game, and my eyes were set on Peter Skronsky for most of the game against those Penn State edge rushers, and he held up really well. He's been one of the more consistent offensive linemen, I'll say, not even just tackle, offensive linemen in college football the last 2 or 3 years. Kind of remind me of like a Tyler Linderbaum that was at Iowa, who was a center, but in like a tackle form. The thing with Peter Skronsky is, will he be there at pick 16? Once again, I don't know. It's going to be really close. I've seen a lot of mock drafts to have him in like the top 12, right at that 12 spot. Some have him right at 15. Some have him behind there. And the thing that's really going to determine with Peter Skronsky is his arm length. Yes, he is a left tackle, but he does have arm length concerns to where some teams might have him graded and projected as a starting left guard. Once again, would I take him at left guard? Absolutely. I think he would be still a great pick in the first round as a left guard. Would I take him in the top 10, top 15 as a left guard? I don't know. But then also for Washington, I think Washington really likes Charles Leno. I don't think he had a bad season. I think he had a good season with some bad moments that people remember against these really young, really fast edge rushers like Trayvon Walker, Aiden Hutchinson, that we had to go against. And it's going to happen. No, there's not really a perfect tackle out there. But I think the team is going to keep Charles Leno on that left side unless they can get like a Paris Johnson to fill that left side. I'm more so looking at the right side. But also Peter Skronsky, if you draft him, maybe he is your left guard for next year, and then maybe you move on from Charles Leno and you move him to left tackle. You just don't know. Now, Broderick Jones is a guy that is possibly going to be in range for us. I think this is a perfect spot for 16 if you do go left tackle. 6'4", 315 pounds out of Georgia. And once again, very reliable, consistent, just dominating left tackle right there for Georgia. Great running game. Protected Stetson Bennett in the national championship team. He's been one of my favorites I've looked at. Paris Johnson's number 1, Skronsky's 2, and I have Broderick Jones right there at 3. So I think Broderick Jones would absolutely be a selection that's very possible at pick 16 if he lasts that long. And I think he could. I think you're going to see a run of corners in that top 15 for sure. Quarterbacks really depends on how many tackles fall to Washington at 16. But nonetheless, I think Broderick Jones would absolutely be a home run. Now let's look to the inside of Osiris Torrance out of Florida, big time guard, one of those guys at the Senior Bowl that I got to talk to. Just a really popular name in Alabama coming out of there. He's played left guard and right guard. Is 16 too high to draft him at guard? For me, it is, because I think you could trade back, get more picks. Obviously, you need a trade partner to be able to do so. I wouldn't go too far back. Maybe mid 20s is as far back as I would go. It really depends on what's on the board and also what you get out of it. If you get another second this year, it's where you can get a corner that can start right away, or an offensive lineman that can start right away, then yeah. I mean, that would be huge. Maybe a first next year, a second this year, and a third this year to move back, depending on how far you go, obviously, would be huge. And pick 16 was good to Washington last year. Got my guy Jahan Dotson, super hype about it. Not a lot of people really knew who he was. And he looks like he's going to be one of the more promising guys, alongside with Terry McLaurin on that offense, which is going to be huge for us. And we traded back to get him. And we were able to get Sam Howell. Who else was in that pick? Brian Robinson, I think, was one of those other picks we got. Cole Turner was one of them as well. So just big time move on draft day to be able to trade back. Do we do it again? That's one thing I'm really taking a look at, because the middle to late first round is really good. And like I said, that second round with offensive lineman and corner still is really good. So it just depends on who's on the board and who really fits Washington schemes. That's something I'm going to talk about here with some other positions. Now, DeJuan Jones, the freak athlete out of Ohio State, that right tackle that broke records at the Senior Bowl, 6'8", 375 pounds. That's really big. 89.5-inch wingspan, which was the longest that the Senior Bowl has ever measured, and it showed. I mean, I talked to him in the field probably 2 or 3 times after practice. He only practiced that one day, and his agent, from what I heard and talking to him, pulled him and said, look, like, you showed out the first day. You're dominating guys like Isaiah Foskey, all these edge rushers. Your measurements showed up. You look really good. Yeah. Is he kind of in like that Mekhi Becton size to where it's like maybe he's too big? I don't know. That's the one thing I'm struggling with, is like, what does his playing speed look like? He has the strength. He shows that he can dominate guys, but what's he going to look like against these NFL caliber, speed rushers on that outside? What's he going to look like against a TJ Watt or one of the Bosa brothers? You just don't know. And he'd be going against Montez Sweat, Chase Young, and some of these other guys in practice if he were to come here. So I think that would be, it's something to watch as well. For me, 16 is still just way too high. Maybe if he was at that, 350 range, 355, 360 even. He's just a massive man. I mean, I think he's going to be a great long-term right tackle. Don't get me wrong. But I think, once again, that's a guy you could trade back to the 20s and still get. I don't think he goes top 20. I think some of these other guys like Broderick Jones, Peter Skronsky, maybe even Osiris Torrance, just because if a team needs a guard, could go in front of them. But offensive line is absolutely in the cards for Washington. Mayhew and Ron Rivera said it in their kind of end the season press conference. We need to get younger on the offensive line, and we need to get better. Like straight up. If Sam Howell is QB1 or whoever is, the offensive line is going to be a key part in this, whether it's the running game or it's protecting the quarterback, especially if it's Sam Howell and he's running the ball. You got to have someone there. Now, let's talk about corner. This is the most intriguing position for me because of all the prospects. Everyone has their guy. And after watching the film, after going back and breaking down Washington's defense and where they were good and where they struggled and where they look more comfortable at, I'm down to 2, maybe 3 guys. One I really wouldn't call a corner, but I'm down to 3 guys that would be just home run fits for Washington at pick 16. And the first one is the fastest riser in the draft, a guy who was like a 3rd round pick. Then he moved up to 2nd, and now he's like top 10. Some people have him as corner 1. That's Devin Witherspoon out of Illinois. Kind of a smaller guy, but I think he's like right at 5'11", maybe 6 foot, which isn't bad, but he's just, oh my gosh. You watch his tape. The dude is nonstop, just high motor, aggressive, physical corner. Whether it's in the run game or he's breaking up a screen or he's following you step for step in your routes, you'll see him in the slot. You'll see him in the outside. The dude is a just freak athlete. I think he's going to be a great corner in this league. Just he plays with the confidence on every single rep. I'm not saying he's as good as Sauce Gardner, but like he reminds me of Sauce Gardner of how he just carries himself on the field. He knows what he sees. He's confident in what he sees. He knows how to attack every single route and every single rep. Just pop on the tapes. Devin Witherspoon out of Illinois, big-time guy. He would be a great fit. And the thing is, Fuller plays best on the outside. Could you move him to the inside, as that nickel? Sure. I prefer to keep him on the outside. I think he had a great year last year. St. Juste, is he a corner 1? I don't know. I think he's had some really good moments. Obviously, there's some injuries, concerns there. We don't know. Could he play inside? Sure, he did it. I like him more on the outside. Could you put Witherspoon on the inside as a slot guy? Absolutely. I think he would ball out. But then also when you take, St. Juste off the field, you're going to be rotating a good bit. I'd still put Witherspoon on the outside to where he could hold down a wide receiver too. I think he would do it with ease. Christian Gonzalez, he's my other guy. Personally, like I have him as corner 1. I've had him for corner 1 for a little while. And it's because I think he is the most complete corner in the draft when it's looking at coverage, when it's coming to, tackling is huge. That's something that's super underrated as a corner. Can you when it's just you and the wide receiver, you need to make sure you wrap it up because if not, he's gone for a big gain. That's something that a lot of people don't really talk about enough with corners is you got to be able to break up some of these big plays. And for me, Christian Gonzalez is the ball skills, is the coverage ability, but his ability in zone and man, I think he's the most well-balanced out of all of them. And I think he's the most polished. He was at Colorado, which is crazy. Colorado had 2 really good corners with him and Mekhi Blackman from USC, and they both transferred. He lands at Oregon, showed out, turned into a first-round talent out of nowhere, really. Not a lot of people really knew him at all at Colorado, but he comes to Oregon, and then one season people put on the tapes like, holy smokes, this guy's a baller. He does everything well, whether it's pressed, whether it's soft, whether it's off. Bail, I saw a lot of bail from him. The dude, he just knocks it out of the park. He can run stride for stride, but he has great hands. He fights, contested catches. He does everything for me, and I think he would be amazing. Washington was actually a top 3 zone defense in coverage in pass coverage last year. And I think if you plug him in where St. Juste is on the outside and keep Kendall Fuller on the other side, I think it gets even better. And that's hard to really expect, going from top 3 in zone, and then it could get better because of him. I think you would see him even more turnovers as well because his ball skills are phenomenal. And my kind of wild card, because he's not a corner, and at Alabama, he played the star position, which is kind of like the nickelback / big safety role that Malachi Moore really had. But then Brian Branch was just so good. He took it over. And he's just, for me, he is one of my sure guys in the draft. I have 3 or 4 guys on here that I think are going to be sure guys for the offensive line. I think Paris Johnson Jr. is a sure guy. You just know he's going to be good. For me, I think Brian Branch, when it comes to corner / DB, I think he is my sure possible future all pro caliber DB. He's just that good. Just watch the Kansas State game, the bowl game at the end of the season. That was one of the greatest individual performances I've seen by a DB in college football in a very long time. Like I was like, holy smokes, Brian Branch not only like didn't sit out of the bowl game, but he made this like just a mic drop of like a last curtain call at Alabama. Once again, you could put him as a big safety to where Cam Curl's not coming up as much, or you can put him as that nickelback. And big nickel, or like I said, big dime, he can be your big safety guy. And he's just a physical, hard-nosed guy. He's like a slightly bigger Devin Weatherspoon, but that he can move around. That's what makes him so versatile. And I think he fits what you want in today's NFL when it comes to defense, being able to defend tight ends, quicker slot receivers, maybe the middle of the field and zone, whether it's, a wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 coming across the middle. I think Brian Branch does that excellent. And of course, I've got to talk about Joey Porter Jr., Keely Ringo, Cam Smith. Are they possible selections there for Washington? Absolutely. I'm not rolling anything out, but when it comes to fit, I don't think Joey Porter Jr. is a good enough fit for us, which sucks because you see the Penn State flag over here. Love Joey Porter Jr. I think he does fit better in like a Pittsburgh defense where they play a lot of man, which is why they got William Jackson III and they let him go. So I think he fits more of a defense like Pittsburgh. I think he'd be great. I think he's going to be good anywhere he goes. But I think when you're talking about scheme wise, I would much rather have on our defense Witherspoon, Gonzalez, Brian Branch over Joey Porter Jr. I think he's going to be really good. One of the most dominant corners at Penn State, in college football the last 2 years. Keely Ringo, man, a lot from one thing that I learned from the Senior Bowl was a lot of people don't think Keely Ringo is going in the first, which was wild to me. But a lot of scouts, a lot of teams were talking, and they really don't think Keely Ringo goes in the first. He has some hip concerns, like with hip movement. He's still super raw. The upside is just there, though. But this corner draft is so good. People think he's going to slip. They think he's going to be the surprise of draft night. So maybe I'll come back to this video. Come draft night, maybe I'm super wrong. Maybe he does fall to the second round. I'm going to come back to this video, so get ready. But still, that one really surprised me because I like Ringo. But, man, if you do watch that Ohio State game, he was getting abused, especially by Marvin Harrison Jr., but he abused everybody. But still, just Keely Ringo has a lot left to work on. The upside is just tremendous with him, though. Cam Smith, once again, it's just a really super deep draft, and I think in any other draft he's like a top 3, top 4 guy, but in this draft right now, same thing, just a really physical man corner. South Carolina, really dominant. He had his guy Darius Rush, who looked really good at the Senior Bowl as well. Really good secondary, but just for me, I'm just not as high on him as other people are. Maybe I'm wrong, whatever. But if I'm looking at a corner / DB, Witherspoon, Gonzalez, Brian Branch for Washington. It's one of those 3 guys. If it's like Joey Porter or Keely Ringo, I'm like, kind of confused by it, honestly. But next up, I have quarterback. And I'm going to talk about quarterback real quick because now, even after all the media at the Super Bowl going on right now, Ron Rivera pretty much for the second time has said, we're going to go into offseason with Sam Howell, presumably quarterback 1. He said they're looking to bring in another veteran to compete with them. I think they bring back Taylor Heineke as a backup, maybe 3rd string. I don't know. Maybe he is the vet that they're going to bring in because technically Heineke's not on the team. Technically, he's a free agent. So maybe he is the guy they bring in. So it brings up the question, will Washington really draft a guy like Anthony Richardson, who has just outstanding skill set? You want to talk about potential, like Anthony Richardson out of Florida is it. He has the size, 6'4", 238, only a redshirt sophomore. For me, I don't want to compare him to Trey Lance, but I'm going to compare him to Trey Lance because of the experience. When I look at quarterbacks, experience is one of the biggest things, and I've said it so many times. I love a Justin Herbert because of how long he was at Oregon. I want my quarterback to have experience, going through the motions, going through the different offensive schemes, just learning, developing his mechanics, throwing the interceptions, being able to bounce back and adjust, read defenses, all that. Anthony Richardson has a lot of really good, just freak athletic ability. And does he have the potential to be like a franchise quarterback? Absolutely. But if you roll the tapes of this year of Anthony Richardson, there's a lot of accuracy concerns, a lot of mechanic issues. But can you fix that with your feet? Yeah. Do I think that there is a learning curve for Anthony Richardson? Yeah, I think it's going to take some time for him to become a quarterback like what Justin Fields is going to be this year coming up. I think Justin Fields is going to be great. And I don't think Washington is in a position to do that. Maybe next year, first year of the owner, new head coach. If Ron Rivera is gone, then yes, that's where they're going to be at. But for this season coming up, I think they roll Sam Howell QB1, let a veteran compete like Ron said they're going to. I think that's what's going to happen. I don't think they go all in on a quarterback, drafting another one when they just drafted Sam Howell and really writing him off before getting a legit look at how he looks. He looked great in that Cowboys game. They said he practices really well. He looked good at minicamp, OTAs, training camp. When I was there, I was super excited to see Sam. And that's what made it even more confusing that it took so long to see Sam Howell in the game. But nonetheless, he beats Dallas. He beats your rivals at home in the last game of the season. And he looked good on his legs and then also through the air. Did he make a mistake? Yeah, but he came back from it and won the game. So I think Washington does roll with Sam Howell next year. I don't think Anthony Richardson is in the cards. Maybe if they felt really good about Hendon Hooker and he fell like in the mid rounds or something, they might take a swing on him just as like a security. But still, I don't think quarterback's the way to go at pick 16. But I will say this one is another hot topic. The last guy I have here is tight end Michael Mayer out of Notre Dame, 6'4", 251. This is another one of my guys that is a sure lock in the next level. For me, he's looked like an NFL tight end last year and the year before that. People had him as like the number one tight end option. It's a really good tight end draft. But for me, Michael Mayer is the most complete, whether it's in line, but also as that Y that can line up and be a legit receiving threat. He had such a limited offense at Notre Dame, awful quarterback play. You felt bad for him, but he still was like the go-to option on offense, especially in the receiving game, and they still couldn't stop him. Michael Mayer still was a dominant force, and that's what people forget. When you do draft the tight end, you're not just drafting some, offensive weapon in the receiving game. You're fixing your offensive line. I mean, I tweeted it. Y'all tweeted it. I know you did. Remember watching the games, and we're like, why the heck is Logan Thomas or John Bates pass protecting against Micah Parsons or Aiden Hutchinson, some of these pass rushers? Like, they're getting blown up. It makes no sense. Why are you putting a tight end on some of these guys? It made no sense. And speaking of Logan Thomas, I said it in my blueprint for the offseason on the channel here that for me, it just makes sense cutting Logan Thomas because of the salary he's going to take next year, but then also he's just not as effective. And I get it. He had the injury, but it's just a business decision. I wouldn't bring him back. So maybe you get a Michael Mayer at pick 16, or you get a Dalton Kincaid or Darnell Washington in the second, or a Luke Musgrave. But you just upgrade the position somehow. You need to, whether it is in line in the blocking for your running game or a mobile quarterback like Sam Howell, but then also it's another receiving threat. But for me, there's nothing that Michael Mayer needs to come in and do. Like, hey, man, you got to, fill that frame up, get a little bigger. No, look at the guy, watch the film. Michael Mayer is a day one starter at the next level. But what do you think Washington does with pick 16? What do you want them to do? What do you think that the front office and Ron Rivera is ultimately going to decide to do with pick 16? Realistically, depending on what's there, I'm all for trading back a few picks once again just to collect a couple more, because that first, second, and third round this year is really good. So stay tuned. Like I said, I got some draft breakdowns, not only on all the guys I talked about, but a lot more guys on the draft board here on the channel and on your podcast. So subscribe, comment, like, get ready. Let's have a great offseason here on the JTFB channel. Appreciate y'all. Peace.